Hello there, friend. Have you made a big decision in your career, business, or life in the last 2 years? Are you about to make another one? Maybe an important decision is coming that you just don't see yet. Dang, this pandemic party has made good decision making an essential life skill, don't you think? I mean, making a nail color decision when you see a wall of options, well, that's just what I call practice. In today's episode, I talk with my gal pal, Nakita Rowell Stevens, who wrote a very clever and entertaining book to heighten your awareness of your own decision making and what to do if you make a decision you're not thrilled with. By the way, I always ask my guests to take a quick quiz to determine their nail color persona and what their fave nail color reveals about them. It's a fun way to get to know them before we dive into our conversation. You can take the What's My Nail Color Persona quiz too. Just go to livelikeyournailcolor.com/quiz. Or you can use my handy shortcut, mynailcolorpersona.com. Answer 3 quick questions, and in your result, discover your specific nail color persona, your built-in strengths, and how to tap into those strengths when chip happens. Again, just go to livelikeyournailcolor.com/quiz. Now let's get talking with Nakita.
Tired of so much chip happening? Discouraged by so much downer news? Weary from chronic crisis? Don't let the chips keep you down. Welcome to the Live Like Your Nail Color podcast, where the tips of your fingers and toes are ready to inspire you to not give up and to keep creating the business, career, and life you want. In each episode, we flip the chip and let our fun nail color with that crazy fun name cheer us on to remember our strengths, embrace the power of choice, see life as an adventure, and know resilience is only a touch-up or change-up away. Get ready for a good time and a good laugh with your host, Mary Foley.
Welcome back, Live Like Your Nail Color gals. It's Friday Fun Day, and so good to be with you again. What nail color are you wearing right now? Wow, these days there are so many options to choose from. You know, some decisions are exciting because of the possibility they offer. Like when I recently went house shopping, oh my gosh, could we really have a garage after 20 years of parking decks or parking on the street? Now that was fun. But there are other decisions that can shut you down because you really don't like any of the options or you're afraid of how your decision will turn out. Well, one of the essentials of living like your nail color is to leverage the power of choice. The good news is you do have a choice of nail color and so much more. The other news is that you get more comfortable and confident by making decisions. And the more you are confident in that, the more you can truly be in charge of your life and loving it. And that's why I'm excited about today's gal pal. She literally wrote the book on it, and it's called The Decision. But it's not a how-to book like you might be thinking. It's fiction and has more than one ending. Now, more on that in a moment, but it's really cool. But first, let me tell you a little about my gal pal, Nakita Rowell Stevens. Nakita started writing short stories when she was 13 years old and hasn't stopped. And by the way, she's more than 13 at this point. You know, she's got a lot of practice. But through a series of her own decisions and adventures, she started her own business, World Stylist, where she helps clients with blogging, social media marketing content, web copy, email marketing, and book writing. But she's also writing these fictional stories that inspire her own heart. Nakita, welcome to the Live Like Your Nail Color podcast.
Thank you, Mary. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm happy you're here too. And this is just a really fun way for us to talk about making decisions because decisions are really important and we do them every day, all day, you know, and some are medium, some are, you know, small, and some though are really, really important, which is really about what I see in the heart of your book called The Decision. And we're going to get to that. But first, I want to ask you a question that I ask every single one of my guests when she comes on. And
Yes.
that is, I know you took the quiz, What is your nail color persona?
Yes.
What's your nail color persona? What are the results? And did it nail you?
It actually surprised me a little bit, Mary. So I turned out to be a practical princess. And I think it surprised me a little bit because I am typically kind of very much an out of the box person. But when I read the description, it was still me. So classy, sophisticated, practical. I mean, I think I'm pretty classy. I like to think I'm pretty classy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Focused and realistic. So I think by taking this quiz, I discovered another side of me because I can be pretty practical in how I make my decisions, and how I go about doing things. So even though I do think of myself as being very out of the box, I am very practical in how I do things. So to answer your question, yes, it did.
Oh my gosh, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Brought up kind of like a different side of you. Some gals take it and they're like, I'm so not surprised. Oh my gosh, it so nailed me. This you're saying it nailed me, but it made me think about myself a little bit more.
Yes, absolutely.
That's cool. Well, how I know you, I would not have said right off practical princess, but the practical part I get.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are practical. But you're also very creative. So it's, maybe it's just this, I'm practical in the things that I just go, hey, and put a lot of my creative energy elsewhere.
Yeah.
Princess part kind of surprises me. Although really princess, although that's the name I give it, practical princess. It's not so much about being like princess or diva necessarily. It's more about elegance and classy, which, I get it for you. I get that. Okay. So then it also asks about your fave go-to nail color, because even when you're a practical princess doing a lot of French manicures, you still get to pick the color of your tip, right?
That's true.
Did you have an answer for that? And did the description of the nail color also nail you?
Yes. So this one was a little more me. So I was like, yes, I do like my French manicures, but when it comes back down to it, I've always, from the time I was a little girl, been a pink girl. I'm all pink. And so the warm, chatty, friendly, fun, that's me. That's always been me. So that's 100% that nailed me.
Oh, good.
Without a thought.
Well, and so do you like a more pale pink or do you like a more hot pink?
Depends on my mood.
Oh. Okay, the princess might be coming out then. Okay.
And to put things in perspective, Mary, let me tell you about the princess. First of all, when I got married a while ago, I did wear a tiara because and my I did look at it as I was the queen, and my bridesmaids were my court.
Okay.
I did the whole Cinderella thing. So not too far.
What? Okay, then I stand corrected. Maybe in the time that I've known you, the princess hasn't been necessarily the forefront. Okay. There we go. I love it. I always learn something about people, about gals, even ones that I know. Not every one of the guests that I necessarily know so well. So that's always really fun. Well, when you took the quiz, you had to choose your response, to 3 questions. It's not, a hard quiz to take.
Yeah.
Your book, The Decision, is about a woman, Talia, who has reached a crossroads in her career and her personal life. And she has to make a critical decision. Yes. And she's really choosing, will she choose what she believes is the safe route, or will she go for it and choose something that really tugs at her heart? Now that's a little bit more than, let's say, what's your fave go-to nail color? I get it. All right. But I just want to stop there because I know that's kind of how the book is set up. Here's this woman. She's got this decision or this decision. She's at a crossroads. So what inspired you to write this
book? So it's funny because my first instinct wasn't to write it the way I did. I have always been a big fan of going after your passions, going after your dreams, doing the thing that moves you. And so my first instinct was to write a nonfiction book, like, oh, let's go after your dreams, and I stopped and I asked myself, oh my gosh, this is so cliche. Why? I mean, there's so many books out there that are about going after your dreams, rah, rah, rah. I'm like, I don't want to do what everybody else has always done. And so I kind of looked inside of myself and said, what is a creative way? Okay, do it your way, Nakita. What is a creative way to tell the story of what you really believe and to really impact people in a different way than what they're used to seeing all the time? And that's how this was born.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, and so much of the work that you do for businesses and companies, you do storytelling,
Yes.
some way, shape, or form, right? So this is storytelling, really tapping into it. Actually made me think, live like your nail color and using the metaphor and the aspects of nail color to talk about things in life and about whether it's decision making or and the power of choice or remembering your strengths or resilience. It was my way of coming up with a unique way to get to these topics as well. That made me go, I haven't really thought of it that way. Practical princess. Okay, then what does that say about me, right? So I love this. I love this because we need new ways of thinking about things and experiencing them. So a short story. This is not really that short. I mean, it's a long short story. It took you more than when you were 13 years old. But anyway, a story really brings us in differently. And I think what's so unique about this book is that it's just not one storyline, as I kind of mentioned earlier when I was starting to talk about it. And it's not one ending.
Right.
It's set up as a series of decisions. And the reader, as a reader, I get to make a decision at some point. Does Talia do this or does Talia do that? And depending on what I choose as the reader, I either flip to the next page or I fast forward to another page that you say, go to page 67 or something like that, right?
Yep.
And that happens throughout the book.
Yes.
And so I could read the book several times and make different decisions and have different endings.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so creative, but it's so real. We kind of try to project ahead. Oh, well, if I make that decision, well, that might be, lead to this, and then that might lead to that. And what might I do there? So I'm just curious. All right, how did you come up with this idea?
Well, I can't take 100% credit for it because it's not 100% original. I grew up an 80s baby. And as a kid, one of my favorite books that I loved to read was Live Your Own Adventure. I don't know if you remember those as children. Well, they were, I think they actually still make them today, but they basically are choose your own adventure. And Choose Your Own Adventure basically were like little books. I think I started reading them probably like late elementary school is when they were popular. And they were always adventure books, right? So it could be like, okay, do you continue the hike with your friends or do you go into the cave? and then it's like, I'm going to go into the cave, and it goes, you died. And then I remember I would read these books like 50 different ways because they had so many different endings. And they weren't even that thick. They were probably like 100-page books, but they were just so like a lot of series of very quick decisions that you would make. And so that was my original I think inspiration to a certain degree, because I remembered that from my childhood, but I wanted to do an adult version of it. And I wanted to do it in a way that was a little bit more deeper decisions that had to be made, not so many as there were in a Choose Your Own Adventure book, and something that would require someone to take some serious, like deep thought, like, do I really want to do this? Because I really wanted my readers to put themselves in the shoes of Talia. I wanted you to feel like you really were her as you were reading the book.
Well, you definitely mastered that, because as I'm going through, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm right there with her. And that's why I thought you really kind of nailed the scene, right? She's working in a company, kind of corporate, kind of this growing corporation that is existing, not really a corporation, but it's an agency. And it's growing and it's evolving. And then she's unexpectedly offered a partner position company. which could skyrocket her. And she so didn't see this one coming. And
Yep.
yet she's going, she's got this tug inside of her heart that whether or not she's gonna follow her dream, that it's not really been nurtured, is what I very much yet, about opening a boutique, right?
Yes.
And so there's this big dilemma that goes back and forth and isn't just one decision. And I loved that crossroads because there's a lot of women who have either been there or think of themselves as perhaps getting there. I'm working for somebody right now, but I'd love to work for myself, or I'd love to have my own business. So why did you happen to choose that crossroads? Is that because of something you were struggling with, or you were making the decision through? That was your adventure, so to speak, at the time?
Not exactly. I would say it's her scenario is pretty fictional, in the sense of the exact scenario of her going the boutique versus the agency. I think starting a boutique is something I've thought about before. It's something that definitely interests me, and I think that was part of my pull towards doing that. And I thought that it was a creative enough of a career, and I thought it was a big pull from what she was already doing, from going the corporate route, which is what we're taught to do. We're taught to go, we go to college, we get a good job. She did those things. She did the things that kind of follow the status quo of being successful. And that was the goal, is I wanted people to realize that we are conditioned, we are trained to kind of follow a certain path in our life, and not seeing that there's anything 100% wrong with that, because for some people that path is exactly the path that you want to follow. That's fine. But for some of us, we follow that path not realizing what it is that we really truly want to do, and it gets lost in the shuffle because we're doing what everyone else wants us to do, or what we've been told to do. And so her path, these are just kind of symbolic of what your dream might be. Like, what is it? I don't care if it's, I want to be a comedian or if I want to be a singer, no matter how good or bad you might be at it. But if it's something that has always been a tug at your heart, but you're going this direction because this is what everyone else has told me, how much are you betraying your real path or your destiny by not at least giving it a chance?
Right. Well, also, I was just thinking about, you're talking about awareness too. You have to be aware that there are other options, and aware that you might have a dream.
Yes.
That is beyond what you're right now seeing in front of you, or that you've been exposed to. I was thinking, when you were reading these choose your own adventure books, okay, yeah. No wonder I didn't read them as a kid, because I was in college. Okay. So I was picking my adventure. It was called engineering school, and I didn't like it. Okay. So I came to a crossroads about little more than, I was like 2/3 of the way through, and I went, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this profession. And then I said, do I want to finish my degree in it? And then I went, okay, well, if I do, then, oh my gosh, I have to get through. But I did some of the rational part that said, well, if I change to this major, how much can I get credit for? Basically, not very much when you're in engineering. Just saying. All right, just a preview for anyone who has a kid that's going through it. If they change their major, you're going to be paying more tuition. So I decided, well, I'll just finish and then I'll figure it out. But because I didn't want to go to school that long, it's really what it was. I'm more of an action oriented, like, let's get this done and keep moving. But what I love about in your book with the decision is, this crossroads that is kind of first and foremost of, this career in a company going up and possibly doing her own boutique was one level, but there's another layer. There's this layer of she's a single mom. She's dating somebody else who she thinks is a really good guy. She's got the ex-husband, and he's nearby in the kid's life. It's not contentious. That's not always the case, but she's got this relationship decision too. Yep. That's happening at the same time. And she's got this, I had to leave the small town in order to aspire to something more or see what else is out there. And so there's a bit of that pull that goes back and forth. And so I love the fact that it's realistic and that looking at someone's whole 360, so to speak, of their life. It's not just a career, their business, and how they're going to make money and make their way in the world. It's their relationships with children that they have or want to have, as well as the partner in their life. And those are big areas, right? And all these are kind of going on at the same time, and one decision impacts the other, which kind of leads me to this idea about what I really loved about it is this whole idea of decision making. So when we have to leverage the power of choice, we could say, oh, I have all these choices. Then you got to make a choice, and you got to think about how you're going to make that choice. And so many women are at a similar crossroads, particularly a major crossroads, relationship crossroads, income producing crossroads, just fulfillment crossroads, particularly from the last 2 years, all this change and challenge. And you and I have both known people that where we've seen people change careers, start a business, end a business, start a relationship, end a relationship, move somewhere else. I mean, pretty major stuffs. I almost wish I could write a book for each of us with all the kinds of options that we could play out, right? That would be really cool if you could do that. But obviously that's not life. But I'm wondering, what are your thoughts or your advice about making decisions in this brave new world that we have, since everything just seems so weighty and that it's presenting itself to us.
Yeah.
Do you really want to do this? Do you want to do this instead?
Yeah.
And so the decision-making process becomes even more critical. So you have any thoughts or advice about making decisions, how to make them?
I think people have, with the things, with so much that we have been through in the course of the last couple of years, people are gripped by fear when it comes to making decisions. They're afraid to even dip their toe in the water because they don't know what the consequence of that decision is going to be. My first instinct in answering that question is to tell people to not be afraid to be spontaneous, to be a little bit spontaneous when it comes to making decisions. That's not saying that you have to have a knee-jerk reaction to how you make your decisions, and not to make them thought-provoking and meaningful. But it's kind of like that whole, is it easier to just dip your toe in the water and just stay like, oh, I'm gonna get in, I'm scared, or just jump in? And my experience has always been those moments where either I was pushed by someone else,
right,
or I made, so, and in life, typically it's circumstances that might make you, that might even be that push, or you just made that choice and said, I'm just going to do it. It's very few experiences in my life where I feel like I regretted those choices, or even that push, even if that push caused an extreme amount of discomfort and I had to go through some things in order to come out to the other side of it, because it created a level of growth in me that took me to another stage or another level of where I needed to be as a person, as a human being. So I would encourage people to be courageous, because you got to realize that to have courage doesn't mean that you're not going to be afraid. You're going to have to make some choices scared and just push through. So that in this day and age where I know it's hard to do, where I know a lot of people are afraid to be able to make those choices, that would be my advice is you got to do it scared.
Do it scared. Yeah. Which doesn't mean, I think that really is helpful. If you're feeling some fear, well, welcome to being a human, right?
Yes.
That's okay. And a lot of times I like to think about Wonder Woman, and she inspires me. She feels to me like she's fearless and brave all the time, and therefore is absent of any kind of fear. But actually, I'm adding that onto her. I don't really know, right? She's still acting brave. She's still taking a step. She's still moving past any kind of hesitation and timidity and doing the action. And so that's what I see. And I assume she has no doubt whatsoever, but she probably does, right?
Mhm.
She probably is like the other Wonder Woman. I wonder what the heck happened, or I wonder how this is going to turn out, right? Kind of a thing. I love your idea, though, is spontaneous. The first thing it made me think of, and I just want to test this out on you, is
Yeah.
where do we want to go to dinner? I don't know. Let's try this new Indian restaurant. Have you been there? I don't know. Let's look it up online. Okay, I have a couple reviews. Well, it says 3.5. Is it good? I don't know. Let's just try it out. And you get in the car or you get on the bus or whatever you want, and you go and you just find out. Now, the reason I say that is it's not like if it doesn't go well, okay, it's not like life changing, right?
Right.
It's not a crossroads decision. It's not the weightiest decision. And yet it might help us all get a little less wrapped up about making a decision, like you said, and almost practice it like a muscle. Would that be a good thing to start to do more of?
I think so. Absolutely. It's baby steps, right?
Yeah. And then there, of course, there's my friend, and she and her husband are like Mr. and Ms. Spontaneous. Okay. So they're great when you're like, hey, haven't seen them in a while, or hey, you want to go do this for the weekend? And sometimes we can, and sometimes we can't, kind of a thing. And I just decided over time, like I was getting all wrapped up saying no, can't do it. And I was like, they're just asking. Okay, let's,
Yeah.
And so that helped me to understand where I was having my own hang up about it, and then decided not to have any more hang ups. When we make decisions so often, they either impact someone directly that we're with or love or on our team, and if not, indirectly. So I'm just curious. I mean, Talia, in your fictional story, there were quite a few relationships she kept in mind when she was making decisions. Who should we include in making a decision?
I think it depends on the gravity of the decision that you're making, how big that decision is. I think there are going to be decisions in your life where it's really up to you to make that choice. And at the end of the day, it always is if it's your choice. But there are going to be decisions that you make that are going to impact other people. And you have to ask yourself based on and when I think of the people that you're impacting, you really want to think more so about your inner circle, the people that you care about the most. And you have to ask yourself, how is this decision going to impact them? And what does that mean to me? Because there are going to be times where you have to make a decision that maybe it's not popular. Maybe it doesn't impact them in a way that you thought it would, even though they're people you care about. But to not make that choice would set you back. Yeah. And so you really have to be introspective enough to know how valuable that decision is to you and whether or not you are allowing other people to you don't want other people to dictate your decision. You just want to include them. And I think that's one of the mistakes that we make just as people in general. We allow other people to affect how we make our decisions. And instead of making that decision for you, you just made that decision for this other person because they changed your whole perspective. So you have to be, and it's okay to get feedback and get perspective, but you have to be grounded in knowing your direction and what you want. And if you're able to accept feedback and feel comfortable in that feedback, and if it pivots you, but it's meaningful feedback, okay. But if you're not grounded in your decision and you allow someone else to cause you to waver, that's not healthy.
Yeah, I always, I think that's great advice. And one of the things I've thought when I've asked people for input is if in their response, it's very critical of me, or there's some putting down, some kind of thing where, and it feels intimidating, or it feels manipulative, or it feels, makes you feel trying to make you feel guilty. All those are negatives, right?
Yes.
And so that, I think to myself, I just, my whole radar goes up like ding, 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 ding. Danger Will Robinson, which, by the way, I bet you didn't watch that when you were growing up, if you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, because I've rerun. So, but it makes me go, okay, that doesn't make me feel good and doesn't really help me make a decision. It all makes me I actually want to just push their ideas back.
Yes.
And I get defensive internally. And I think that's actually, though, a good warning sign that this person, for whatever reason, is not necessarily thinking about an aspect they're not thinking about you first in terms of what might be good for you and why.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, they're only filtering it through if it's going to be good for me or not.
True.
And so, every person, relationships, that every person you have a relationship with is slightly different, and you have to take that into account. But it is one of those things that I think it's an art too. And the more years you have in and making these decisions, and you see how they turn out, you go, okay, first of all, if nobody died, that's a good thing. Second of all, if you actually made some forward progress, in some ways. But, it's interesting, then that's a good thing too. It's interesting, though, in your book, you get to sometimes get to a point where, as the reader, just how you do this, just how you do that. And when she does that, and I flip to page 67, it gives me 2 pages of what happens, and then it says the end. Just like the books that you read when you said you were growing up, right? Choose Your Adventure. And so it's kind of like, ooh, that's it. Like, it didn't go great. I mean, it just was like, darn. And I want to go, okay, I'm going back to that point again. I'm going to pick a different decision. No wonder you read those books 50 times. You could read your own book, this one here, easily 10 times, and have different kind of outcomes and decisions. So it's just, but that whole thing of where you come to the end, I mean, I thought to myself, what if we make a decision and then we realize it was either the wrong one or certainly not the best one? What do we do then? What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's always room for adjustment, right? The great thing about life versus a book is it's not the end. So you can pivot and take a look back on, okay, this wasn't a good decision. And I guess a word that people hate, but what they don't realize is it's a big part of progression is failure. So a bad decision is in essence a failure in your life, right? But I've always been taught, well, not always, as I've more so in my adulthood, that failure is really, it's a learning lesson. And it's the most successful people in this world have failed so many times. So you have to look at, okay, this decision didn't go the way I wanted. What do I need to learn? What did I learn from this? And what do I do differently now? Because fortunately, this is not the end. I'm still here. The story's not over. My story keeps going. So how do I change it and get the outcome that I really want?
I love that. Boy, that it rings so true for my life. What can I learn and from this situation, and what can I do differently going forward? And that speaks a lot to being resilient.
Yeah,
your choices. And that's another aspect of living like your nail color is to boost your resilience. So one way you could boost your resilience one could say is make a lot of choices you're not so sure about, and then see how well it goes and say, what did I learn? How do I fit it? I would practice that though when it comes to just restaurant picking, it doesn't have a whole lot of consequence, kind of a thing.
I like that.
That's out of
I like
balance
that.
now, right? Okay, and to be resilient. I want to switch a little bit and go from fiction to nonfiction. What's a personal or business decision you've made during this pandemic party, and how did you decide it was right for you? How's it turned out like you wanted?
Well, I found myself going through some of the biggest transitions. Actually, I won't say some of the biggest transition of my life
Whoa.
during the pandemic. And being transparent, I was dealing with going into the pandemic, about a couple months going into the pandemic, the end of a 20-year relationship. And that's a big transition.
Yeah.
I moved to a new city. Another big transition. Dealt with some pivots and some changes in my business. So I dealt with a lot of big changes and transitions going into the pandemic. And then, of course, you throw the pandemic on top of that, right? So it's like the whole world is changing around you while your whole life is changing at the same time. And, but I wouldn't change anything that's happened in my life as a result. I think the move was a good move for me, because even though it was a move that happened as we were in the midst of a pandemic, it was a reset for me. It was a fresh start. Yeah. And it was something that I needed because it allowed me to be able to really open up and start to grow and flourish and see who I was as a person instead of being behind another person. And now I am really able to see the things that I'm able to accomplish without any inhibitions. And so I feel very confident in the decisions. Was it a bumpy road? Absolutely. There was definitely a lot of bumps along the way to get there. But it's kind of what I was talking to you about earlier, that feeling of sometimes you have to go through something. Sometimes you get that push, but it creates a growth within you where you discover things within yourself that you didn't know were there. And that's what this whole transition has done for me.
Wow. Thank you for being so transparent and saying that. I know there's a lot of gals listening who can relate to at least one of those: relationship, moving to a different place, business change, and then all the other feelings and adjustment that came from the pandemic itself. But wow, that's huge. And saying that it was messy at times, that it didn't go as planned. I mean, my gosh, how could it all go? I mean, how do you even plan that? I'm sure you probably just don't. You just say, here's one decision I need to make, and then another one, and then how's it impact another one? But I love what you said, but is that it gave you a fresh start. Mm-hmm. And particularly in crossroads decision making, big things in our life, it can feel scary and certainly uncomfortable. But when we have in our gut where we know it's the right path, it's the right direction, then and we get enough to the other side or down the road of that decision, it is exciting.
Yeah,
it is rejuvenating.
It is.
And you go, wow, okay. Now, to me, that's really leveraging the power of choice. Part of that leverage is the energy that can come from it, the renewed energy, because staying stuck just seems to drain our energy.
Yes.
That doesn't mean everyone right now needs to have a crossroads decision. You may be completely fulfilled and satisfied in major areas of your life, but if you're not, there's nothing wrong with us, but it does indicate, like you say, circumstances in life can kind of say, time to grow, time to make a change. And you do have a choice. Wow. And so far it sounds like you are liking this bunch of decisions, right? You can have another fictional book. It's called the Decisions. Make it multiple, right?
That's right.
That's great. Oh my gosh, this has just really been fun. And I just appreciate you talking about this. So I love the book. I highly recommend it for everyone. I want to put a link to where people can pick it up.
Thank you.
And that link's going to be in the show notes. And it's a fast read because it's so well written. You're just like in the action of it. Like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? I mean, it should be a series. Just saying. All right. It could do that. I have no idea if anyone listening even knows about Damn to Do miniseries, but I'm just putting it out there. But let's just go back to nail color for a second, because you know, lots of decisions when it comes to nail color.
Oh yeah.
If you could create a nail color name that any of us could use to inspire us to make decisions that we feel good about, what would that name be?
Okay. So I had to think about this one for a while because but the princess in me came up with one name, but then the practical girl came back. So
we got decision.
So I came up with instinct. And the reason why is because when I think about every decision that I've made, everybody knows there's a gut feeling whenever you have to make a choice. And your gut is rarely wrong. Rarely. When I have ignored that gut, which is your instinct, every time I've ever ignored that gut feeling, I regretted it. So I think when you talk about instincts, when you talk about decisions, you gotta listen to that instinct. And I think that'd be a fun nail. I don't know what color it would be. I think it would have to be something pretty exotic.
Could it be in the pink family?
It could be in the pink.
Would that be
maybe pink and purple. I love purple too.
Oh, we could do design. You could do a design. It's a pink purple.
Yeah.
Oh,
That might be fun.
I don't know, maybe some swirl to it. Okay, we'll get on that. We'll get on
Yeah.
that. I like that. You could also do like pink every other color. You could have solids that are pink, purple, and go back and forth. You ever seen that? It's called a mixed mani for all those out there who want to be, really in the know, right? You could just say, well, all of them is going to be pink, but I'm going to have like my index finger. That's going to be purple. I mean, there's all kinds of options.
That's true.
I love that. All right. So instinct. I love that. Okay, cool. I see. Then this is practical ways of how our fingers or our toes, because we can put it and make it on our toenails too.
That's right.
And when go with your gut instinct, right? And trust that. Thank you so much. Well, this has been a ton of fun. I really appreciate you talking about your book, talking about decision making. It's one of those things that I don't think really gets talked about a lot. We all like to talk about choices, but then we have to make a choice. How do we do it? Particularly with the big things in life, this is helpful, but it could also help for like going out on a Friday night to a new restaurant, just saying. But for those of you who would like to, connect with you, get to know more about you, Nakita, what's the best way for them to do that?
You could send them to my website, which is wordstylistrva.com. And I'd love to connect.
Okay. That sounds great. And like I said, I will also put a link to your book in the show notes. And again, the book is called The Decision by Nakita Rowell Stevens. And this has been so fun. And my instincts say we are done for today. Have a good one. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mary again, I hope you enjoyed listening to Nakita and I muse about decision making, something we do multiple times a day, but often don't think too much about it until it's something bigger than usual with a lot of consequence. Then it's easy to get stuck, gripped with fear of making the wrong decision. In this Flip the Chip segment, I wanted to highlight Nakita's advice for making decisions in this brave new world. She said, 1, have courage. You will have to make some choices scared. That's normal, but that doesn't mean that you have to have the feeling of fear stop you. And I would add that to move through your fear, focus on what you want as a result more than the process of getting there. And she said, too, that a big part of progression and forward movement is failure. So if you make a decision that didn't go as you had hoped, all's not lost. She said, ask yourself 2 key questions. 1, what did I learn from this? And 2, what do I need to do differently? That's flipping the chip. I mean, she said, as long as you're breathing, there's no the end, like at the end of her novel. There's always room for adjustment. You can make another decision. And hey, why not make one of your not so critical decisions one of wearing a fun nail color on your fingers or toes to just cheer you on? Pick a fave or new to you nail color and give it the name Instinct, as Nakita suggested. So you pay attention to what your gut is saying to you about the decision as well. You can make decisions to create the career, life, and business you want, one step, one nail color at a time. Look forward to being with you next time on the Live Like Your Nail Color podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Live Like Your Nail Color podcast. Ready to live and laugh more? Know a friend who could use some of that too? Then subscribe at livelikeyurnailcolor.com or your favorite podcast app and share this episode right now with the person who popped into your mind. Together, let's flip the chip to be stronger, smarter, and happier.